Hi, good afternoon, everyone. And you're joining us live from the National Apartment Association Apartmentalized Conference 2022.
Yes.
It is fantastic.
It's awesome.
The energy, we have record attendance. If you're not here, you should be.
Yes.
So, and yes, Patrick, who just walked by behind us, you should be here too, but he is. So he's benefiting. So I am super excited. I have one of my most favorite human beings that is with me today for our podcast. And this is PropTalk, and it's a podcast powered by Resman. And I'm your host, Elizabeth Francisco. And today's episode is really special. And it's called You Know You Deserve More. And we're going to talk to Stephanie about what does that mean. And I'm hopeful that she's going to highlight some of the very things that I have learned from her myself in the past. And I'm a groupie. I'm a fangirl.
I'm a groupie of yours, so,
gosh.
it's mutual.
Well, and I did not know that there were such things as angles until I took selfies with her. But beyond being just a beautiful human being inside and out, she's incredibly intelligent. She is a powerful woman who has done amazing things in this industry. The industry as a whole has benefited from a lot of the tireless efforts and work and volunteering you've done at a variety of levels.
That's very kind. Thank you.
First, we need to acknowledge that.
Thank
So
you very much.
it has benefited myself and others. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I don't want to steal her thunder. You don't want to listen to me talk. So I thought it'd be a great place to start. Is like, I'm assuming that everyone knows you, but there might be somebody who doesn't.
Sure.
So will you just tell us a little bit about your career and what that journey's been like?
Yeah, you bet. So I am Stephanie Puryear Helling, and currently the owner of SPH Services, leading people and teams to success. My company has been around for about 18 months, and I help leaders and teams with transformational leadership, change management strategies. I just did a session with Rich George on change, and resiliency. And so my background is in multifamily. This is my 30th year in multifamily. And, I say 25 plus, but I'm going to own it because 30 years is a long time.
It's a lot of
that
knowledge.
is an amazing milestone to be here in San Diego celebrating 30 years in multifamily.
I'm right behind you.
Yes. And so I've worked for a few incredible organizations in that period of time. I've actually only worked for 3 companies.
Wow.
In 30 years,
realize that.
only 3. So I worked for a really small owner-manager. When I first started in the business, when I was in college at UT, I actually had no plans on getting into the industry. I was pre-med. I was also in the Army National Guard, a combat medic, so I was doing that and going to college. And I walked into an apartment community in downtown Austin. It was beautiful. And I walked out with an apartment and a job and an amazing amount of rent for a 2-story loft apartment downtown. I was like, yes, sign me up. And I got 35 leases my first month.
Oh my gosh.
I was kind of a natural.
Yes.
And I loved interacting with people, the fact that every day was different. I still really did think this is a short term while I'm in school.
Yeah.
Thought I wanted to be a doctor, and here I am 30 years later. Oh my goodness. So I worked for that company for a few years. Then JPI is a company.
I didn't know. So I'm learning so much, you
Oh my
guys.
gosh.
Like, I did not know you were pre-med.
Yeah.
That explains why we get along so well.
Yeah.
And JPI, well,
JPI.
circles.
So JPI had come to Austin. They were relatively new, merchant builder out of Las Colinas. A person that I'd worked with for that small owner-manager, she was actually my leasing professional.
Okay.
I was an assistant at the time. She had gone to work for them. She said, you need to learn about this company. So I did. The company that I was with, I loved. They had nothing else in Austin, nothing else in Texas. It was the one flagship community. And so I went and met with someone at JPI and worked there only for 3 years. But it was the most foundational 3 years because I learned so much about structure and process and mission and vision and values. I learned a lot from the first company too, but this JPI has a special place in my heart. Then I went to work for Greystar, which is a global organization now, but when I went to work for them, they were tiny. Only 20,000 units nationally, and now they are the global leader in multifamily. I worked for them for 21 years, and I had the benefit of wearing multiple hats on a regional and national level, in marketing, training, education, people development, strategic initiatives, and I grew up there, right?
Yes.
So, and here I am. So I've had a great experience with a lot of incredible companies and people. And then lastly, what I'll tell you about me is I've been very involved in the National Apartment Association Education Institute for probably the last 12 to 13 years, heavily involved at the national level, serving on various committees and boards for both EI and NAA. And I am a past president of the Education Institute because people development and helping others is really the core of what I'm passionate about, hence my business, right?
Yes.
So thank you for asking. That's a lot, but that's 30 years worth of information.
And it's funny because I didn't think about this till just now. I guess it's a good thing I didn't know you then, because at one point I almost went to work at Greystar. Like at least 3 times. There was a lady there that as RVP that even attempted to recruit me and my entire team. But then resume wouldn't exist today, so all things happen for a reason.
Exactly.
But if I had known you, I probably would have gone.
Aw, that's so sweet.
It was it wasn't in the cards yet.
Yeah.
So instead, I just got to be a fangirl and sit in the audience and continue to learn and invest in myself, which you're such a big proponent for, and you're the face of that for this industry. To me, that's what I think of. Like, I know you worked at Greystar, but that's not what I picture you, like I associate you with. So I think that's really special.
Thank you.
And I did not know this. So I listened. Okay, I really am a groupie, so I'm like showing all my cards. So I stalked her and I followed her, and there was a podcast you were on, not mine, but I forgive her for that because she's here now. But I did not know that you were in the military.
Yeah.
So amen, and thank you for your
Thank
service.
you.
How incredible. And I was just in awe, and I didn't know that about you.
Well, so I was Army National Guard. I was a combat medic, which means I went to basic training. I actually went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Funny story, they'd actually shipped me to the wrong military base initially, so I'm the only female young girl, 17 or 18, 17, on a bus with all of these young guys. And in my head, I'm thinking this Army thing is pretty awesome. And we get there, I'm in my own barracks. Apparently they all have to wake up super early. I get to sleep in. The CO calls me to his, I had made to order omelet at the mess hall. And the CO calls me to his office and he said, "Private, we have a problem." And he said, "Your orders say that you're male, clearly you're female." And so they had to ship me elsewhere because at the time it was an all-male military base, but kind of funny story. At any rate, long history in my family of military service. My grandfather was a colonel. My stepdad was in the Marines and also a colonel in the Army. My dad served a period of time. And my middle son, just this week, where I came from to NAA, he graduated basic training.
Oh, wow.
Army basic training at Fort Benning. So super excited about that. Yeah.
Fort Benning, is that in Alabama?
Georgia.
In Georgia.
Yeah, about 2 hour and a half, 2 hours from Atlanta.
Yes. So,
very close to the Alabama side.
Yes.
Like right there.
So my brother, Casey, he actually finished his basic there in the about 8 months ago.
That's awesome.
Yes, who knew?
Yeah.
The things you learn about people.
I know.
So one of the things that, so I knew this ahead of time because I've heard you say it, but I know on the podcast it's called Celebritized, or Get Celebritized. You have a mantra that I think is so powerful. So I thought we'd start today talking a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to steal your thunder because I like the way you say it.
Okay.
So tell us what one of your mantras is, because I know you have somewhat of a new one too, a new mission.
Sure.
But let's talk about the first one.
So what you heard me say is, and I didn't coin this, but it's something that I really try to live by. And you have 2 choices when faced with any type of situation that is difficult, whether it's emotionally difficult, financially difficult, whatever the case may be. You can be bitter about it because your life is changing, being turned upside down. It's not what you thought it was going to be, whatever that is that comes up for you. And it's natural to feel those feelings, by the way. I'm a huge, speaking of groupies, I'm a huge Brene Brown groupie, okay? And she has a podcast, 2 episodes that I listened to recently called Toxic Positivity, because yes, well, I agree
Oh.
with being positive and looking at the bright side and flipping it around to not be bitter, but to be better.
Mm-hmm.
We are humans, and we do have to experience those natural myriad of emotions and that process when we're going through something difficult versus stuffing it down. That is not healthy. So when I say you have two choices, you can either be bitter or better. I'm not saying fake it. I'm not saying pretend that it didn't happen. I'm not saying don't get upset and cry or pissed off or whatever those natural feelings are about what happened to you. You have to go through that.
Yeah.
But there does come a point when you've gone through that,
You have to make a choice.
that you have to make a choice, because what I see people doing, and we can all fall into this trap, right? Is they ruminate on something that happened to them and they don't get through, which Rich George and I just spoke about change management and the change curve. And we were talking about it in the context of organizational change, but it also applies to personal change as well, where you fall into the pit at some point, right? It's very similar to the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross model of the grief cycle, where you fall into a pit. So we all will go into that pit, but how long do you want to stay there?
Yes.
And for me, I don't want to stay there very long because it's not comfortable. It doesn't feel good. I don't want to live that situation over and over again. And so that it's really a conscious choice at that point. You know, do I want to be upset? Do I want to blame the circumstance, other people, all these other things, which maybe in some cases, you know, bad things happen, and sometimes people do shitty things, excuse my French, but I'm being vulnerable and real here. Okay, but sometimes there are things that were done that weren't right. But can you change that? Right? Or oftentimes no. So you do have a choice though. What is in your sphere of influence, your control, is your mindset and what you want to do with that experience, that knowledge, going forward from this point forward. And so bitter or better is something that it is kind of a mantra for me, because it's a lot of self-talk that I do. It's not just something that I help others with. It's something that I apply to my life when I'm in that pit. I'm like, okay, you're at that point now. Okay, you've gone through the feeling. Now it's time to focus on next action, next strategy, next goal. And how can you use some of that pain or how can you use some of that pain for your purpose? So
it's like a growth pain. That's where I always look at it. Things hurt. You have to deal with them. And, you know, I've been referred to a little bit as a positive human being.
You are. And I love that. You probably, so in StrengthsFinder, I would imagine that one of your top 5 is woo. Have you done that? We're going to do that together.
Okay.
I bet you it's woo. Anyway, you are a positive person.
But it is a choice.
Yes.
Because I'm very risk averse and I can get very analytical, but I choose to be positive. And I've been in the pit just like you have, even in a work situation. And you're right. If you're not having the conscious awareness, it can prolong the situation, and you're just holding yourself back, your progress back. You have no idea what else is out there waiting for you. You have to be always open and willing to go out there and seize it. But I'm glad you talk about it, because being positive is not a weakness, but sometimes in business it's perceived that way. Like you know, being overly cheerful or kind is associated with weakness. And I don't agree with that, because I know it's a choice, and I know it's hard sometimes to be positive.
Difficult. Exactly. Right? You know, and in the podcast that I listened to fairly recently with Brene Brown, and she was interviewing a doctor that wrote this book, and Dr. Susan, and I'm so sorry, I should know the last name, but I'll give it to you in a moment. Anyway, she wrote a book called Emotional Agility, and she talks a lot about that. But being positive, you know, as long as it's done in a healthy way, it is a position of strength. She also talks about, you know, the fact that we call things soft skills. So in our industry and others in business, we tend, you know, historically have called the people skills, which I would argue, I'm biased because my biggest focus is people, that the people skills are soft skills. They are not soft.
No.
They are some of the most important and most difficult skills to help others achieve a certain level of proficiency, right?
Yes.
It doesn't come naturally to everyone. And so I love that you said it's not easy and it's not a weakness. It's not.
Yeah.
So
Thank you for that.
Yes.
I love that you brought that back to light and you're talking about it. And I hope everyone that's listening to and watching our podcast, take a moment to self-reflect on that, because we are all going to face those tough times, and you have to prepare yourself for it. And you're right. And I love that you point out it's okay to mourn. It's okay to feel hurt. It's okay to be pissed.
yeah,
It's just give yourself that allowance,
right,
and know that there is going to be another day. This is where you're going to make it.
right.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
So, and speaking of change and
Yes.
adapting to different things, you mentioned you started your business 18 months ago, and you're an entrepreneur. Welcome to the club, sister.
Thank you.
But I'm curious from your perspective about, you had 3 companies that you worked for effectively.
Yeah.
And you spent 21 years?
21 with my last
Which
company.
has become quite a large corporation.
Yeah.
What's that been like for you to make the leap from that environment and also probably those resources into doing your own thing and running your own business?
Yeah, great question. So it is obviously very different being in a corporate environment and then becoming an entrepreneur. But I will tell you, from my perspective, there are a lot of similarities, because if I think about when I started with, the last organization that I was with, it was tiny when I started there. We didn't have a ton of resources. We were building. We were not even a centralized organization. We had 5 separate partnerships, and all of those partnerships were doing phenomenally well, but they all had their own way of doing things, their own systems, their own processes. And then we went through an initiative back in 2007 to kind of combine that. And so if I think back at not only the organization itself, but my specific contributions and my roles during all of the years and the change, I was really sort of an entrepreneur, if you will, because really pretty much every role that I had from very early on in the organization, when I moved to a corporate environment, which was within about a year and a half after I joined the company, was a role that didn't previously exist, but it was identified as needed. And so I was having to create solutions, create process, create structure, be comfortable being in a very ambiguous environment. And that really was the case for me the entire time I was with them, which I feel very fortunate for, because I learned so much about how to pivot, how to create, how to make something from nothing, how to redo something when you thought it was going to be great and now you got to start over. So there were a lot of elements that serve me now as an entrepreneur that I learned being in that environment, just with our structure, the way that we were. It was very entrepreneurial, not just for myself, but for several others. So there are some similarities there. The biggest difference for me specifically is obviously I'm starting my own business, which I've never done before. So everything's up to me. I don't have an expense account anymore. I probably miss that the most because I am the expense account, right? So travel is mine. Just kidding. I do miss that. But anyway,
Then they're done that.
Yeah, so that's one thing. Learning some of the other business aspects about running a business. But I am a solopreneur, so it's still small. But, I built my own website. I am focusing on marketing, all the things that I did for a company that I'm now having to do for myself. But I've aligned myself with great resources. So I actually have, I'm a coach. In addition to a speaker and a consultant, I have 6 coaches.
I heard that on the podcast, and I was surprised about that.
Which statistically speaking, coaches are one of the best potential customers to go after because we really invest in ourselves and we believe in it. So, anyway, so I align myself with resources that I could partner with to help me identify the things that I didn't know how to do, so I could get there better, faster, escape the pitfalls sometimes. So,
amen to that. I have always
yeah.
said, so I used to just tell my kids this too. I was like, this whole concept of learning things the hard way, it's inevitable.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes we're too quick to embrace that. And I don't know. I think one of my gifts, luck, smart aspects of business for me, or I didn't say that well, but I don't want to learn things the hard way if I don't have to.
Right.
I would much rather learn from somebody who's been there, done that, figure out what you did, maybe master that, and then figure out how I can make it better.
Yeah.
And so I applaud you for saying that. And I love that you're getting and engaging with coaches, because I don't know if we've talked about it in the past, but kind of the journey here at our company, and for me, being the only female in the room most of the time, and having to carry so much weight, because I'm one of the original founders, and the only one left here in the day-to-day business, me and Nick. But for me, I was still on the executive team, and finding my way to navigate that situation became really challenging. And at the time, I made the mistake of not reaching out. They say being a CEO is really lonely. Well, I wasn't technically the CEO any longer, but I was the only female on the team, and I kept a lot of that to myself. Like you said, it's not healthy.
Yeah.
And I was so afraid to reach out into the space and to my peers, people I could have leaned on to make that journey, possibly even help me figure out some of the problems I was dealing with. But I was so concerned about how it might make the resume look that I held back. Yeah. And I suffered in silence. And I regret that. That would be a lesson. That's why I think it's amazing that you're working with coaches, because having a network to think about how to approach your business and what you can learn from other businesses. So,
and if I can just interject real quick. So one of the big things that I miss, it is lonely. Let me rephrase that. It can be lonely. Mm-hmm. If you're thinking about it as I'm a solopreneur, it's just me, but it's not if you're staying networked. So I will always give back to this industry because this is where I grew up, and this industry has given so much to me. I will always give back. Yeah. But I do miss having my team, my family, if you will, at the same organization. And certainly I'm still networked with a lot of them. I'm friends. But it's not the same when you're not working on projects or talking to each other on Zoom calls or whatever continuously. You have to make a more concerted effort to maintain those relationships. Yeah. But as a result of having coaches, and they're not all business coaches. 2 of them are actual personal life coaches that I started engaging with before I became an entrepreneur. But they also helped me identify where did I want to go with my life. At any rate, through having these coaches, I've been able to make really great connections with other entrepreneurs that don't do what I do. They have all different types of businesses, but they're in the same situation starting from scratch, or, were in the corporate world or had other businesses and now they're doing something new. And so reaching out and making new connections and maintaining those. Yes. And just remembering that you really aren't alone, but it's finding that right network that you need in your life at that time. Yeah. So
I wonder about that for the younger generations coming up behind us. That I didn't engage with coaching the first time I ever looked into it, and I completely believe in it. But at the time, I just couldn't afford it. Yeah. I was a single mom. I think you were too, right? And I legitimately could not afford it. And so I wonder what kind of resources, have you looked into it? And this is an off-the-cuff question, but is there advice that maybe thinking about how could the young property manager, the young regional manager that, probably is struggling with, hey, I feel out of place, or, you get into those executive environments and it's sometimes the speak is different, the tone is different, the acronyms are different. Yeah. And knowing how to navigate that situation can be really intimidating, and having a coach can help with that. Yeah. So have you had anybody ask about that, or?
Well, it is an investment, right? Okay. So any type of development that you participate in is an investment, whether it's continuing education, hiring a business coach, getting a certification, getting a licensing for a particular industry. And it can be expensive, but you're investing in yourself. And so I think that where there's a will, there's a way.
Well,
And if
Google and masterclass.
yeah, but where there's a will, there's a way. And if you really want to change and have expert help in doing that, you'll find a way to make that happen. And there's all different like scales of coaches. I mean, you can pay some coaches a few $1,000s, you can pay some coaches a few $100,000, and so finding the right person for you, for where you are and where you want to go, I think is important. But there are ways to find that if you really want to invest in yourself. It's like anything else that we invest in.
And it can be as inexpensive as your Audible books.
Absolutely.
There's a slide I always. One of the sessions I've done for several of our customers is, I think you may have seen it once. It's called Being the CEO of Your Own Career.
Yeah. And
if you're going to have that entrepreneurial spirit and be the CEO of your own business, which is you got to find those ways to invest.
Yeah.
But sometimes the salary ranges when you're starting out, if you're a single parent, they get really tight. So Masterclass, Google's, I love both of those.
Well,
LinkedIn has a ton of great content.
LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I mean, there are several coaches, including myself, who offer free sessions, right? It may not be one-on-one.
That's okay,
but it may be a group session. So there are lots of resources that people can tap into, and it may not be everything that you want, but at least you're getting something, and it's a place to start, and people can be pointed in the right direction. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's a good segue, because you have, as you mentioned, have spent quite a bit of time chairing the committees that are helping us bring education to the multifamily professionals. And so how did you end up doing that? First and foremost, because I don't know.
Yeah. So when I was with my former organization, I was in training and marketing on a regional level many years ago. And as we were going through that initiative to merge our 5 different regions into one company, I was sort of tapped on the shoulder because I had a passion for it. So when I moved into that regional role, I actually had invited all of the other regional education and marketing directors to Austin, where I live, to meet with me, because I said, I'm new in this role. I know you're out there. I don't know what you guys are doing, and I think we should collaborate.
Yes.
So we actually formed our own national education group, council, before the partners were actually forming a one company initiative. It's sort of a grassroots thing. And one of the partners at the time, who is now the executive managing director for a management company, Andrew, reached out to me and he said, hey, I've heard about what you're doing, and you've invited some of my people, and we should talk, and would you lead this education initiative as a committee and invite more people, more stakeholders? I said, sure. And that ended up morphing into a national role. So because I was involved in education, training, marketing with my organization, our company was very invested in the credentialing and the designation programs. And so as a result, our organization, our company, was offered a board seat. And so I guess that, the C-suite talked about it, whoever was contacted and made that decision, and they said, who would you like to fill that seat? And my name was thrown in the hat. So Jeff Lowry called me when he was the president of EI at the time, and he said, hey, Stephanie, I'm Jeff Lowry. Nice to meet you. You've been, nominated by your organization. We'd love to have you. And so that's how I got involved, and that was, 2009 maybe, something like that.
Oh, wow.
And so it was sort of a natural fit, because that was my passion and purpose of the organization. And so for me to be involved in EI, not only obviously as a volunteer leader helping to serve EI, but it also served our organization to have that synergy.
Yes.
And I'm passionate about it. And so I just continued to be involved and, still serve the organization. So I served on, several different committees as chair.
Think back to what we were just talking about the importance of investing in yourself. And I think there's a real valuable message here, because if you're working for a company, and because of what I do now, I do come across prospects that don't always have the budgets, or some are not even willing to invest in the education of their teams. And I know that's a tough position to be in, and I know you feel strongly about this, but what would you say to the young woman or man that's, the new and upcoming professional in our industry about how investing in their career will change their career, the trajectory?
Sure. Well, budget aside, because, we all have different budgets. Money can be a challenge, deciding what to invest in and what not. That oftentimes is a personal decision, or you may have limitations based on where your organization is. But don't let that hold you back, because, we mentioned a few resources a moment ago where, we do have the benefit of Google, and we do have the benefit of other resources that we can tap into that don't cost a lot of money. But investing in yourself is key. Zig Ziglar, been around forever. Love his quotes. And one that resonated with me many, many years ago is, if you do more than what you get paid to do, eventually you will get paid more than what you do. Paid more for what you do, rather. Excuse me. Anyway.
Okay, wait, say that one more time.
If you do more than what you get paid to do, eventually you will get paid more for what you do. Zig Ziglar.
That is a great quote. And I don't think I've heard that quote, but that is a really strong quote, because that really goes against the that's not my job mentality.
Exactly. And something else that I've always been a big believer in is growing where you're planted. And what I mean by that is,
I love this.
we all want, most of us, want to achieve more. We want what's next. We have goals, we have dreams, we have aspirations. Sometimes that can get in the way of where we are today. So, for example, a leasing professional who just started, but they come up to the trainer, which this used to happen to me in class. Oh my God, I want to do what you're doing, which is great to have that goal, but they want it like tomorrow. And they're still trying to learn their role, right? And so there's a balance between having goals and aspirations and visions, but where are you now? And are you the best possible leasing professional that you can be today? Because I tell you what, that will open doors.
Yes, it will.
You will get acknowledged, and you will get recognized, and you will be offered more opportunities. That's the natural progression. So do what you do, and do it as best as you can, and that will open up doors. And that includes not only doing your job really well, but what are you doing to sharpen your saw, right? Stephen Covey, sharpen the saw. What are you doing to develop yourself? And again, it can be through formal education, but a lot of informal education. You did a session just a little while ago about some amazing business books that can be helpful. Maybe it's personal development is what can help you the most. Each individual knows, right? And if you're not sure, ask a friend or find a mentor. So
what you just said about being current where you are, one of the things that made me think about is, as we're in our early careers, maybe not even just started your careers, but you can really get, things can look really green over on the other side. And I think it's really important to point out, you do need to learn, and now what I refer to that as becoming the domain expert. So on the product and software side, that's what we refer to it as. And I think sometimes we forget that sometimes staying in an organization, it's not always about the salary increase, that you should be evaluating what is your growth opportunity for personal growth, for learning. Do you have a leader in front of you that you want to emulate? That has value. And I think it's something that we don't talk enough about, because it needs to be a consideration when you're thinking about your own salary expectations. Right? Because there's a cost for that, and there's a value for that. And if you're not including that, you're doing yourself and the company you currently are with a disservice. Because there's a lot of effort that goes into education, like your company that you came from. So much of an investment in their people. You may not get that elsewhere. Right? And so I think that was important. So that was my point I wanted to come back to.
Great point.
The other thing I think, we've talked about, you have that choice, right, to be better or be better. And I'm curious about like the most difficult challenge that you've had to overcome. And I know there's both personal and professional.
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave it up to you because whatever you're most comfortable talking about. But I think knowing and sharing with our audience about like what's challenging and how you hold yourself through it.
Yeah.
That can be really impactful.
Okay, so here's what I'm gonna share. Okay. In the last 6 years, I've been through a divorce after 21 years of a marriage, so basically my whole adult life. My oldest son had cancer. He is better now after 6 years. Hallelujah. My middle son went through a really hard time because he was young when the divorce happened, when his brother had cancer. He's also the middle son.
Oh, yeah.
So,
That's a lot.
Not feeling like you get enough attention. It took him a little bit longer to find his purpose. Oldest went to Baylor, graduated, all of that. But I just flew here, from his basic training graduation, and he was quoting, the Army Creed and talking about the values, and it was, oh my gosh, so inspiring. So he got there. But, it was a hard time with him. Probably my most challenging parental moment yet. I had a sister that unfortunately passed away at a very young age and left behind a 1-year-old daughter. And then I left my organization during COVID, and that was really, really difficult because part of me thought I would retire there. And I knew that we were restructuring things and changing, so I expected that. So that's a lot in a very short.
There's a stress spectrum about the things that cause the most stress. I think you just, out of the top 10, I think you just listed off like 6 of them.
And I actually had my home on the market during part of that time.
Okay, well, there's number 7.
I didn't do it. I didn't do it. But I share all of that with you, not to say, oh, woe is me, but just to be authentic. Like, this is what has happened to me in the last 6 years. It's a lot. It's a lot. But every one of those situations, I could have gotten stuck in the pit. Yeah. Right? They were tough. I mean, I cried. I was upset. I was worried. I was anxious. I was all the, 37 emotions that you can feel, right? Because you have to feel it and you have to go through it. But each one of those taught me something so valuable. And in some cases, it was meant to happen exactly that way so that I could learn what I needed to learn to be where I need to be now.
To be where you are today.
Right? Yep. And so I'm going to talk about the layoffs, since we're talking about professional. So I've never been fired from a job. I mean, I still feel like, but I'm also, Strengths Finder, one of my top 5 is Achiever. And when I talked to my coach about that a couple of years ago, she's like, so as an achiever, one of the things that you're challenged with is you're never completely satisfied, right? So,
we might be the same person there.
Yeah. But no, I mean, there are moments like I saw some of my former team this week, and it's lovely seeing them. There is a little pang in my heart though. That's like, oh. But I wouldn't go. I wouldn't rewind.
You're so in the place you're supposed to be. That's what I meant by it. It shows on you.
Well, thank you.
And that's why I think it's such a great story.
Thank
because
you.
I think your story is kind of the best is yet to come.
Well, it is. And that's
I believe that.
And it's like, you deserve more, right?
Yes.
That URL points to my business website. One of my business coaches helped me come up with that, right?
It's a great one.
And I will be starting a podcast where I'm going to highlight people who have gone through significant change in their life, but have overcome what sometimes can seem unsurmountable odds, and they've gotten to this beautiful, place. It's like the whole hero story, right? You start here, you go down, you come back up. Woo! Yeah. But I am so thankful, even though not every day, especially when you go into the pit and you're like, oh my God, this is hard. Oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. Oh my God, there's this fear. I have to pull myself back up, and I'm like, I'm not going to the fear. I'm going to have the faith. And I'm thankful that that opportunity opened up. So thanks for asking.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that, because I took a lot from that story. I know parts of the story. I love your attitude towards life. I can't wait to listen to the podcast. I 100% will promote it.
And
I
you're
will
going to be
part-
on it.
I'm volunteering.
Thank you. Okay.
But yes, you 100% are way too young to even think about retiring, first and foremost. Even if you are of the age, you're not of the age. So that's not going to
And
work
she's
out.
not asking, so I'm not answering.
No,
but
not-
you can do the math.
She's not going to. But that's what I'm saying. There's just so much more that you have, and it's, you're just such a blessing.
Thank you.
I wish
You're a
you
blessing.
nothing but like so much success. You're going to continue to change lives. You changed mine. My property management team's not here. Obviously, they're not with Resmond, but I know you had impacts on them too. And we just thank you. We thank you for your service to this industry, to our country. But I'm selfish, so I'm going to say to the
Yes.
industry. And I hope you come back and join me again.
I would love to.
Okay.
Thank you. Can I give you a hug?
You give me a big
Okay.
hug.